He has not done many interviews since he took office, so we did cover a lot of ground, including what's next on his agenda. In the face of Republican opposition on things like voting rights and tax increases on the wealthy, the president vowed to change the filibuster. We also talked about Vice President Kamala Harris.
What is this
and, of
music?
course, his rescue dog, Major. You're out here selling your COVID relief package. You're executing the COVID relief package now as well. What's next on your legislative agenda?
If you notice the criticism of the COVID relief package from my Republican friends, is they say it spends too much money and it gives too many tax breaks. All these tax breaks go to the bottom 60% of the population. And guess what? They need it. The $1,400 check, child care tax credit. They don't like it because, in fact, their idea of a tax cut is to give the Trump tax cut where 83% went to the top 1% of the people in America.
You're going to be raising those taxes.
Yes, anybody making more than $400,000 will see a small to a significant tax increase. If you make less than $400,000, you won't see one single penny in additional federal tax.
But let's talk raw politics here. You didn't get a single Republican vote for tax cuts. How are you going to get a Republican vote for a tax increase?
Well, I may not get but I'll get the Democratic votes for a tax increase. If we just took the tax rate back to what it was when Bush was president, top rate paid 39.6% in federal taxes, that would raise $230 billion. Yet they're complaining because I'm providing a tax credit for child care? For the poor, for the middle class.
You just say you're not likely to get Republican votes for the tax increase. You're not likely to get Republican votes for H.R. 1, expanding voting rights, or the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So aren't you going to have to choose? I know you've been reluctant to do away with the filibuster. Aren't you going to have to choose between preserving the filibuster and advancing your agenda?
Yes. But here's the choice. I don't think you have to eliminate the filibuster. You have to do it what it used to be when I first got to the Senate. And that is that a filibuster, you had to stand up and command the floor. Once you stop,
that is the Manchin. That's the Manchin argument as well. This actually works with like more conservative conservative members of the Democratic Party. Even if you don't eliminate the filibuster in its entirety, guys, no. Listen. This is actually a decent centrist proposal. Okay, it's one that is doable. It's one that is understandable. It's one that is practical. It will make it harder for Republicans to abuse the filibuster. If you're going to fucking filibuster, if you're going to filibuster some bitches, you literally have to be there. You can't just say, oh, well, we're just going to filibuster this, so sorry, you can't push for it. You literally have to be there, and you have to stand. I want them to fucking stand, okay? Straight up. Unless they can't, obviously. You know, if they have some sort of medical condition that renders them unable to stand. Yeah, especially because, like, guys, remember, Bernie was apprehensive about the elimination of the filibuster and didn't want to do it because Bernie Sanders has utilized the filibuster in the past as well. Not for the most common and most famous uses of the filibuster, which is to literally have Southern senators stand up against any sort of proportional voting that would render the black constituents they have to have a voice in the political process unable, because that's usually what the filibuster is used for by Southern senators who oppose civil rights. But it is a tool that the minority party can use from time to time, and it's important, and that's part of the reason why you know, some in the Democratic caucus, even if they are progressive, have opposed it.
Stop talking. You lost that, and someone could move in and say, I moved the question of. So you got to work for the filibuster.
So you're for that reform. You're for bringing back the talking filibuster.
I am. That's what it was supposed to be.
Just put a hold on it, that's it.
Yeah. It almost is getting to the point where democracy's having a hard time functioning. I'm not saying this is going to be easy, George, but I do believe there's enough Republicans over time.
They haven't had that epiphany you said you were going to see in the campaign.
No, well, I've only been here 6 weeks, pal. Okay, give me a break. Been there 6 weeks. I think the epiphany is going to come between now and 2022. 78% of the people say they support this program. 52% of Republicans. Republican voters want to be able to choose between being able to send their kid to a daycare that they can afford. It's not like every Republican voter is a billionaire.
You probably walked into the Oval Office as president with about as much experience, if not more experience, than any other president who's ever served. More than 3 decades in the Senate, 8 years as vice president. So what is it about the job that surprised you, that even you didn't know?
What has surprised me is that I'm not as surprised as I thought.
Well, Madison Cawthorn's not a senator, chatter, so doesn't matter.
But I might be. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's like sitting, when I was vice president, the big difference is that famous expression of Harry Truman, the buck stops here. For 8 years, I had a great relationship and still do with Barack. And I'd always be the last person.
Flex. Motherfucker said Barack, dude. That's a flex. I have a great relationship with Barack. Okay, bro.
Person in the room. And I'd say, throw the pass or run the ball. And I'd give my opinion. I was the last guy, and I get to leave. But he's all by himself to have to make that decision. That's the big difference.
Is Vice President Harris the last person in the room?
Most of the time, yes. As a practical matter, yeah, she is.
One final question.
Sure.
It's been reconciliation bills for almost a decade, and suddenly democracy is almost not working. Yes, democracy hasn't worked for a while, and the weaponization of the filibuster has been an ongoing problem for especially the Democratic administrations. Like part of the reason why they unshackled some components within the filibuster to ensure that regular administrative processes, like the administrative control over the judicial branch, could continue. You know what I mean? Because fucking Mitch McConnell and the Republican Party overall was just like, no, we're just literally not going to let you do regular executive branch duties. We're just going to stop them from happening. So we've just never been able to. I mean, this has just not worked. It has not worked in a while. So making it so that it's at least like punishing and difficult to do such a gigantic action is good. Thoughts on how Biden is doing compared to expectations? He's come around on finding a way around the filibuster. COVID relief is most progressive legislation in maybe 50 years. There's a lot of good in the COVID legislation, and there's still a lot of stuff that I'm disappointed by. $15 minimum wage being one of the main things that I'm disappointed by. Not being incorporated into the budget reconciliation. So I've been very balanced and careful to admit and recognize when Biden goes above my expectations. Like I've talked about how he, how I talked about how what he did is like an old school Democratic thing that most Democratic politicians have not done in years, which is to take a stance in a unionization effort in Bessemer, Alabama. I can understand the disappointment. Also agree with you being balanced. You've been real fair. Yeah, like what he did there was really good. Him talking about the unionization efforts in Bessemer, Alabama against Amazon, very good. His approval rating is really good too, as a consequence of some of the actions that he's taken thus far that are following through on the original promises. If Democrats stuck to broader economic points of view and made that their bread and butter and actually pushed for those progressive economic policies over and over again and pinned Republicans into simply talking about Mr. Potato Head's dick, you would actually start changing the outlook that the American workers had towards the Democratic Party, even within areas like the Rust Belt, where the Democratic strongholds that were backed by unions and the voters that used to be, card-carrying union members would come back to the Democratic Party rather than focus on the culture war dumbass shit the Republicans feed into their brains every day. Giving people money is always going to fucking work, okay? Telling people that you're going to improve their living conditions is just going to work. Corn Pop like corned beef, so we made him an honorary Irish. That's why we call him Corn Pop on St. Patrick's Day. Biden has been good, and the Dems overall have been good, and not being sucked into any culture war distractions so far. I mean, it's not just that, though. Like, a little bit of culture war distraction is still fine as long as, you know, you can whip your party into voting along party lines on progressive legislation that you fucking literally campaigned on that the overwhelming majority of Americans want, right? Like, here's another initiative. Legalization of marijuana at the federal level. Like, this is a gimme, okay? $15 minimum wage is a literal gimme. Card check. Legalization of marijuana at the federal level. These are all straight the fuck up popular pieces of legislation that would legitimately benefit the Democratic Party if they advocated for it over and over again, relentlessly, and screamed from the fucking rooftops and pointed out the individual obstructionists within the opposition party. There is no way that they would be unsuccessful. What they're fearful of is, of course, the Republican Party apparatus, i.e. Fox News and Sinclair Broadcasting, launching a concerted effort in attacking these policy positions. Public option is another one, by the way. Public option is another one. Even I forgot to fucking mention that. These are things that Joe Biden ran on, with the exception of legalization of marijuana. And if he followed through on this stuff, including HR 1 and, re-implementing some sort of like civil rights legislation for voting rights to solidify his base. Wait, Secret Service just arrested people? What the fuck? Outside of Kamala's residence? Okay, we'll look at that in a second. But if he were to continue doing that, Democrats would benefit from this greatly. Okay? They would benefit from this greatly. I do not know why they don't do it. I just do not understand it. But part of the reason why they are benefiting from this at the moment is because Biden has kept up with some of the promises. Hey, what do you think of legalizing all drugs? I agree. I think that all drugs should be decriminalized. Anyway. Do I think Republicans will legalize? No. Republicans will not enact progressive legislation. They will never purposely enact progressive legislation. Don't be crazy. The reason why they will not enact any sort of progressive legislation is because they know their bread and butter and their most active base of support comes from evangelicals, and evangelicals are just psychopathic reactionaries that are against all of these things legitimately. And that's why Republicans, despite recognizing the overwhelming majority support for certain policy positions, will act like the entirety of the American working class is against them, exclusively because they have to maintain their base of support within the evangelicals. They don't want to lose that. So they'll do everything they can to make sure that their base of support has outsized political power in the process through gaming the legislatures, gaming districts, and also on top of that, ensuring that the Electoral College continues. They will do everything they can instead of actually pushing for legislation that's popular. I mean, they literally voted no on the relief bill, knowing full well that there was plenty of Republicans that were in favor of the relief bill.
Is Major out of the doghouse?
Yeah, The answer is yes. Major was a rescue pup. Major did not bite someone and penetrate the skin. And the dog's being trained now. Our trainer at home in Delaware, he was going home. I didn't banish him to home. Jill was going to be away for 4 days. I was going to be away for 2, so we took him home. But you turn a corner and there's 2 people who don't know at all, and you know, and they move, and he moves to protect. But he's a sweet dog. 85% of the people there love him. He just, all he does is lick them and wag his tail.
And you'll see him tonight?
I'm going to see him tonight, yeah.
Mr. President.
15% of the White House doesn't like Major. Isn't it bad to legalize all the drugs? No. Mass decriminalization efforts have been incredibly successful in treating addiction as a disease rather than crime. Criminalizing addiction is actually really bad overall. Decriminalization is also good because it eliminates the black market for drugs, which plays a significant role in drug overdoses, but also additional crime. You keep using decriminalization and legalization interchangeably. Could you clarify? Certain drugs I believe in legalization. Certain drugs I believe in all drugs I believe in decriminalization. Certain drugs I believe in legalization. Like, I think I wouldn't legalize methamphetamine. You know what I mean? I think that should stay decriminalized. Heroin should be decriminalized, but not legalized. I guess legalization eliminates the black market, but up until 2016, fentanyl enters the black market. The majority of opioid overdoses were actually due to legal prescription drugs. That's not necessarily true. The numbers coming from Colorado show that crime hasn't changed much at all. What? All these moms are anti-weed being legal, don't realize that kids are inhaling vitamin E acetate in knockoff hash oil carts. Decriminalizing helps root out the counterfeit shit that literally kills. Legalization implies that you can fucking make meth and heroin and sell it. Okay? That's why I don't think that, like, certain fucking drugs should not be fucking legalized, but instead decriminalized. You know what I mean? And no, methamphetamine and amphetamine salts are not the fucking same. People who say like Adderall is meth, it's the exact same, are ridiculous, dude. Like you're making my argument for me when you say Adderall and meth are the same exact fucking drug. The reason why they're not the same exact fucking drug is because one is legal, the other is illegal, so therefore made in a fucking bathtub. And has a bunch of like insane fucking properties in it. You don't know, God knows what the fuck it's cooked with. And also on top of that, it has a tremendous amount of side effects. It's not the same. Adderall's amphetamine salts, not methamphetamines, exactly. I mean, I make the joke. I play into that meme all the time too, but it's like not the same, obviously. Ultimately, a problem here ultimately a problem here stems from our inability to control the prescribed medication. And again, it goes back to our argument that I was making about profit motive being a part of big pharma's modus operandi, right? Without the profit motive, you would not have overprescription, for example. Without the profit motive, you would not. I mean, the Sackler family and the ongoing efforts to punish this billionaire fucking family, and the failure of state attorneys general to adequately punish the Sackler crime family, basically, for what they have done with OxyContin right now, is literally a great example of capitalism and its failure to actually heal people. If we had a non-profit healthcare system, a healthcare system that did not rely on increasing the profit margins of shareholders for pharmaceutical corporations, then there would be no need to overprescribe certain medication. That medication would be that pharma companies would not be competing with one another with doctors and try to like pump people full of fucking drugs. And you would generally just use drugs to help people with issues and disabilities. And that would be the end of it. So it's still a much larger problem than the way we portray it, just by looking at legalization or decriminalization. Is just one end of the issue. Okay? A lot of leftists say legalize all drugs. Do you think that's ridiculous? I don't necessarily have I don't have a really strong opposition to the legalization of all drugs, okay? I don't. Ultimately, I want a government to regulate all aspects of this. Decriminalization still means there's going to be regulation around it. I wouldn't have an issue with it in the long run, probably. How about we fuck around and find out? Yeah, but legalization or decriminalization is an important first step, specifically because it helps addiction treatment. It looks at people who are addicts as those who should be recovering and should be getting the proper medical care that they need, the attentive, proper medical care that they need, instead of criminals. Yes, I think that's what I'm trying to say. That's why I was talking about decriminalization. Anyway.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, George. I appreciate it.
George,